Well, hello, everyone. Looks like it's ready to get started here. We've got a large group of people that are still dialing in, but let me begin today by thanking you all for joining us for today's webinar. Webinar is titled Mobile and Digital Wallet Webinar Series, and this is part one of this series, and the topic is going to be Landscape, Models, and Process. My name is Randy Vanderhoof, and I'm the director of the U.S. Payments Forum, which is an affiliated organization under the Secure Technology Alliance organization, and that organization was formerly known as the Smart Card Alliance. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be available for playback along with the presentation deck after the webinar has concluded. And there will be time at the end for questions, so I encourage listeners to submit their questions using the user dashboard on your screen. I'll return at the end of the presentation to lead the Q&A session, and I suggest that you submit questions while the speakers are presenting and while you think of them, so that we have time to organize those questions in advance so we can get to as many of them as possible in the time that we have at the end of the conference. So next slide, please. For those of you who are not familiar with the U.S. Payments Forum, let me give you a brief overview of the organization. So the Forum is a cross-industry body focused on supporting the introduction and implementation of EMV and other new and emerging technologies that protect the security of and enhance opportunities for payment transactions within the U.S. The focus of the organization has evolved over the last few years from being singularly dedicated to EMV and its migration into the U.S. market to a broader focus on other technologies beyond card and EMV transaction flow. The work supporting the continued adoption of EMV continues for late maturing segments of the retail market, such as the petroleum industry, hospitality, and transportation, as well as providing support for EMV contactless and mobile acceptance, particularly in the area of testing and certification, and issuer considerations for contactless EMV cards, both dual interface card technology, as well as the offline data authentication features that are being considered. Increased attention on education and addressing issues affecting payments that go beyond EMV, like mobile payment and tokenization, authentication, biometrics, the future technologies for cardholder verification methods, emerging standards addressing e-commerce channels like 3D secure remote commerce, and new fraud mitigation tools to combat card-not-present fraud are also now active projects and part of the U.S. Payments Forum mission. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the U.S. Payments Forum brings together in an open forum of equals across the payments ecosystem, leading companies representing the global payments brands, financial payments issuers, merchants, processors, debit networks, mobile services providers, and other industry suppliers, integrators, associations, government agencies, and transit operators. And this is all done through collaboration on projects to develop resources to assist the U.S. EMV migration and implementation of other and emerging payments technologies. And the collaboration projects take in the form of white papers and development of educational resources such as these webinar series, conference events, as well as development and discussions around formulating best practices and technical recommendations to the standards bodies. We also perform a role of education for our members as well as the industry, utilizing these same tools of webinars, workshops, and member meetings and published resources. We provide continuous communications through market outreach to industry bodies and media outlets on the results of the discussions that are happening within the forum around best practices and industry positions on new technology. And our members benefit from the networking that comes with having so many top organizations participating collaboratively in this environment to interact with all different types of payments industry stakeholders. For more information about our members, these working committees, other white papers and resources that we've published, please visit us on our website at www.pgility.com. uspaymentsforum.org. Next slide, please. So this mobile and digital wallet webinar series is a product of two of our working committees, the Mobile and Contactless Payments Group and the Communications and Education Group. These groups have planned a series of 4 educational sessions on mobile and digital wallets as part of a Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today is the first of these series, and we hope all of you are making plans to participate in all 4 of the webinars. This first webinar is on mobile wallet landscape, wallet models, and processes, and it's going to review the 5 commercially available wallet models and compare their technologies and processes that are used in their implementation. The next webinar on January 23rd will focus on mobile wallet security technologies and approaches. And you may know that security remains the #1 reason why people are not using mobile wallets more frequently than they are today. The third in the series is going to be on February 6th, and it's called Strategic Considerations for Merchants. And it's going to review the key strategic considerations for merchants who might be implementing a mobile wallet strategy. And those decisions have ramifications on what other forms of payments are accepted, training in their stores, handling of returns and other things. So it's really important to understand what those strategic considerations to merchants are in making the decision to enable for mobile wallet payments. And the fourth and final webinar in the series is going to be on February 20th, and that's on strategic considerations for financial institutions. So like the merchants, financial institutions who are implementing mobile wallets have to consider how they're going to manage support for their cardholders, dealing with card lifecycle management issues, and educating consumers about the proper use of their payment products in their mobile wallet platforms that they support. I would note that after each webinar, there will be an optional short 5 to 10 minute online assessment available to test your comprehension and retention of the material that has been presented in that session. Those who participate in all 4 webinars and receive a passing grade on the online assessments will receive a certificate of completion from the U.S. Payments Forum and a discount to our next conference that's coming up in March. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Our first speaker will be Deborah Baxley, who is partner with PayGility Advisors. Deb is an international mobile and cards payments consultant, recognized expert in the industry with more than 20 years experience consulting to cards and payments companies. She specializes in retail financial services, mobile payments, credit cards, technology strategy, and business model development. Through her work in 15 countries, she has advised clients on product direction and competitive positioning, delivering millions of dollars in new revenue or operating cost savings. And she operates as the co-chair of the U.S. Payments Forum Mobile and Contactless Payments Forum Working Committee, and a member of the U.S. Federal Reserve Faster Payments Task Force, is co-founder of NYPay, and through frequent keynote speaking and writing opportunities, she's recognized for insights on the future of retail payments. Also speaking today is Mina Malak, who is Senior Product Manager at G+D Mobile Security. And Mina has been with G+D Mobile Security for over 10 years. And for the past 2 years, he's been an integral part of the US-based G+D Financial Institution Product Management team. Mina's current focus is on EMV, dynamic print on demand, instant credential issuance, and digital and mobile banking solutions. As a Visa-accredited EMV consultant, Mina helps issuers optimize their migration plan while adopting the latest technologies in EMV. And Mina has led global projects for major customers, including national EMV migration, mobile payments, and NFC projects in his career. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to turn things over to Deb Baxley to begin this presentation on mobile and digital wallets landscape. Deb?
Thank you, Randy. And for all of you out there in the audience, I would just put another plug in for the U.S. Payments Forum. It's such a unique group because it has all the stakeholders in the payments industry. It doesn't just focus on the banking side or the merchant side. everybody working together in rooms. When we go to these meetings, we work out solutions to problems that the payments industry is facing. So it's really a unique group, and it's a lot of fun, interesting. We get into some great discussions. And as Randy mentioned, co-chair of the Mobile Contactless Working Committee, one of our projects last year was writing this white paper that this webinar is based on. So there'll be a link at the end of where you can access the white papers. But we spent quite a bit of effort in developing this white paper on mobile and digital wallet over all the topics that are going to be in the webinar series. So to start off with, I think we'd like to do a polling question, if you can go to the next slide. And if you can select, we just want to get sort of a gauge in the audience of how many of you are using. I know I use my Apple Pay pretty much everywhere I can, and also Starbucks, but haven't had the opportunity to use Chase Pay or Walmart Pay yet. So we're just really interested to see how engaged this audience is in mobile and digital wallets. Okay, I can't tell from my screen how many people have voted. All right, now this is really interesting. So similar to me, yeah, a lot of people, well, this is a huge number of people. It's much higher than the average among the population using Apple, Google, or Samsung Pay. And Starbucks, yeah, and I'm kind of pleasantly surprised to see that many of you have used Visa Checkout, MasterPass, or American Express Checkout, Chase Pay, and Walmart Pay. So that's great. Thanks. Go to the next slide. So in writing this white paper, we debated what was our scope going to be, and we ended up taking really the broadest possible view, looking at both mobile and digital wallets. So it could be wallets that really exist just in a browser or in a PC for online shopping. So the way we defined it is that that the mobile and digital wallets enable transactions to be initiated by a mobile device at POS, online, in-app, using one of these 5 models. So that was a lot of work that went into the white paper, is defining what these models are and what the characteristics of each one. So these are the 5 basic models, and then we have some hybrids that Mina will talk about. So on the next slide, we go talk about the first one, device-centric mobile proximity. So these often also called the pays. So it's Apple Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay. But it is specific to the operating system. And in all of these, the way they've been implemented so far is tokenized payments credentials stored either in the mobile device or in the cloud, and we'll go into that. It is provisioned by the card issuer. So the bank has to be involved in the provisioning of the payment credential into the mobile wallet. And it's considered to be an open wallet because it will accept any type of eligible card from participating transactions. It's not limited to a certain brand, for example. And then on the next page is a little twist on that. So Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, you can also use a button inside of an app. So we call it device-centric mobile in-app transactions. So it's all those same characteristics, plus it works in a merchant mobile app if they've chosen to put that pay button in there. And the next page, we talk about QR code wallets, which are kind of the opposite because they are device agnostic, and the payment credentials are not in the phone, they're in a cloud. And you've used these if you use Starbucks and some of the other ones like Level Up. So the QR code is used to complete a purchase at the point of sale, or maybe to authorize a fuel pump. And typically, it doesn't have to be this way because Chase Pay isn't, but typically it's merchant-centric. It's only usable at one merchant. And on the next page, we talk about card not present, card on file. So this is like Amazon Pay. The payment credentials are stored by the merchant or by their provider, so that repeated purchase, you don't have to keep re-entering your card number each time. And it requires consumers to enroll a payment method and have an account, usually. I guess you could check out as a guest, but there's no way to store the credential on file if you haven't got an account. And it's usable by single or multiple merchants. it really started out as single merchants, and now it's multiplying out. And they're device agnostic and open to any kind of card or any participating merchant. And then the last one is a little twist on card on file. It's a digital checkout. These are being offered by the payment networks. So it enables online purchases without having to re-enter your payment credentials and sometimes your shipping address. And so far it's been offered by payment networks to both FI, so the bank could put the Visa checkout or the MasterPass inside of their mobile app, or it could be in a merchant's app. And then optionally, and usually the payment credentials are tokenized. So then on the next page, as Randy said, the rest of the webinar series talks about all these strategic considerations for merchants and financial institutions. And these are some of the design choices that we talk about in those considerations, which is in your wallet strategy, are you going to do only proximity? And the third one there under interaction method for proximity payments is specific to Samsung Pay. As you might have heard, they purchased a proprietary technology called magnetic secure transmission, which is a pretty slick way that it actually fools a magstripe reader into thinking that a magstripe has been swiped. And so in theory, then Samsung Pay mobile wallet is accepted at any POS. And there's a couple of exceptions where it doesn't work, but I'd say 99.9% of the time it should work. And then the other design choice is where the payment credentials are stored. So if you have an NFC-enabled mobile device, it can be either in the secure element, or in the case of Android, they came up with an alternative arrangement which stores the credential in a cloud. It's called host card emulation. So it's associated with the mobile device, but the credential is not actually in the phone. And then you can also choose to store the credentials in card on file, which is not tied to the mobile device. And then the payment options, proximity, in-app, and remote acceptance mode. So in a couple of cases, I don't know if you've heard the term card present versus card not present, but the payment networks are considering Apple Pay and Google Pay as card present transactions, which is good for the merchants, and most of the other ones are considered card not present. And then another differentiation is staged versus pass-through. So a staged wallet is similar to the way Starbucks works, where you have a Starbucks gift card in there, and then it's funded behind there by a regular credit card of some sort. So that's considered a staged wallet. The rest of the wallets are all pass-through, and the only reason we mention this is because some time ago, the first Google wallet, I guess it was called Google Pay, I don't even remember now, but it was a few years ago, it was implemented as a staged wallet. But it's been totally reintroduced, and it doesn't work that way now. And then also mentioned tokenization several times. So a design choice is whether you're storing a PAN, which is the primary account number, the credit card number, versus token. Okay, and with that, I will pass it over to Mina. As you guys think about this next polling question, is what do you find the most coolest, most compelling thing about using a mobile or a digital wallet? And I know in my case, I like to impress the cashiers, but increasingly they're becoming pretty blasé about seeing people pay with their watch. I tend to pay with my wristwatch most all the time. And of course, you hear a lot about invisible payments, payments disappearing, like with Uber. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, but most of you are not trying to impress the cashier. So easier checkout, disappearing payments, and storing coupons. That's great. All right, Mina, take it away.
Interesting results. So yeah, next slide, we, as Debbie mentioned, we look at the hybrid models for the mobile wallets. Here we will look at the mobile wallet implementation based on the enterprise behind the wallet. So we will see the device-centric wallets, where examples are Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and these are mainly around the device. So here we can see that all the features of the device can be utilized in the wallet. For example, you can use the any sensors or biometric sensors in these phones to provide further authentication and user verification while doing the payment. Or also, you can control access to certain features. For example, Apple has certain locking for the NFC antenna, how it's being used, how you do reading or emulation of the payment. But again, that's all limited around the device. So based on the device, you have the features and the implementation of such wallet. Next category is the bank-centric. This is where banks will be looking for their branding. So more around, they don't want to see their cards, one of many cards loaded in other wallet. They want to use their own wallet. And here they can offer their consumer more payment options and payment data. You can pay your card and all the other functions that a bank can offer for their consumers with, of course, that will be always limited to the bank card. You cannot have another card loaded to such a bank wallet. Next one is the network-centric. This is where the payment network and other network platforms like PayPal, for example, could also provide a mobile wallet for consumers. And the main driver for this is offering a frictionless payment, where you will see a payment enabler behind some of the IoT devices. So when we talk about the IoT and the smart home, the fridge is making purchase and all of this, there must be a payment enabler behind this, making sure that the credentials are secured and processed properly as per the current infrastructure. And this is where we can see payment network wallets appearing in the picture, helping and facilitating such type of payments. You can see here Visa Checkout, MasterPass, different features. MasterPass also supports tap and pay. Visa Checkout is limited or maybe focused more into the online channel and checkout. But again, that's all based on the network features and how they see the enablement of a frictionless payment. The next one is merchant-centric. This is where all the wallet features are around the merchant product and the merchant checkout experience. Example, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Walmart, and you see here different features. Walmart is using QR code, other might be using other features, so there are different implementation with that, but the main features will be around the products and how you can add further experience for the consumer at this merchant. Example, you can add more offers, more features about a colored receipt. You can do a return for this product through the app or through the wallet, so you can see a merchant-centric functions and use case. Next one is MNO-centric or carrier-centric, where you can see mobile network operators trying to enter the payment space. And an example of this is Softcard. We'll talk about some of the challenges that face this in the next slides. But here we can see that it was a consortium to make sure that you have a wide acceptance and wide reach of users. Different carriers came up in a consortium business model, which created lots of challenges down the road. Who own what, and as Debbie mentioned, the soft card model was based on a staged wallet where there was a gift card that is loaded through an actual card. So all of this complexity led to some challenges in the business model. Next category is the in-app card on file, COF, or the e-commerce in general, and this you can see different names here. We are mainly focused in the US wallets here, but you can see also Alipay, you can see Klarna, which is started in Stockholm, and we have some implementation here in the US, but still there are different card on file or in-app models and wallets that we should consider while we are doing such modeling and hybrid categorization. Example, you can still pay on using Apple Pay, not through the NFC that we used to do, but you can have a button inside the app, so it will be an in-app payment. Same with Amazon, and all the others also offer different ways of payment that can be embedded within the app, or could be a standalone application offering a card on file use case. And then we have alternative rails. Again, that's a different ways of doing payment. For example, it could be a replacement of an ACH transaction where you have APIs facilitating the way fund is transferred across a couple of accounts, up to a cryptocurrency wallet that is facilitating a transfer between two cryptocurrencies wallet and add all the blockchain and the ledger balance that are associated with such a transaction. And the last category here is the peer-to-peer, where we can see a big rise with that, like Zelle, Pop Money, Venmo, and even lots of social media and chatting application where you can transfer money through chat. And there is WeChat in China. Again, we are focused here in the US, but there are lots of adoption of such peer-to-peer transactions, taking lots of attention when we talk about the money transfer across persons. Next slide, please. Yeah, and with all of these different models that we discussed, definitely during the white paper preparation, we were trying to spot on what really caused more customer adoption and what were the drivers that really make more usage of the wallet. And we came up with some category here that are displayed. Example is loyalty function, how you can incentivize and add more incentives in the wallet to make sure that the users will be using it, and adding more features and offers and deals where the user will have more value add to use the wallet. So loyalty function was one of the main drivers for to increase the consumer adoption. Also offering new type of payments. When you look at the mobile landscape in general, downloading different apps for a single use might not be very convenient, but using one app for different type of payment, if you can use the same app for checkout at a store as well as a transit fare, if you can also use it for scan and go in some cases and avoid queues. So if you have this kind of convenience, will also increase the consumer adoption. So here we add like the offering a new type of payments is an important driver for consumer adoption. And then enhancing the shopping experience in general, how you can enhance the shopping experience at certain merchants, how you can do advanced ordering. And you see lots of innovation in that space. Some technologies like geofencing, for example, where you can enable location, and once you enter a certain area, food will be made or start cooked for you, so you will always get it fresh. So that's something that adding a value and enhancing the overall experience. Same for delivery. If you can have the delivery and the pickup location and all a personalized recommendation in general for the consumer, where you might have a preferred store for a pickup, all of this address details will be pre-populated for that store. Or if you have a delivery, all the information about your delivery and the preference and the timing can be pre-populated. So if you have such enhanced shopping experience, this will also add the convenience to the consumer and ending up with more adoption of the mobile or the digital wallet. Next slide, please. And when we look at the various implementation with all of these categories that we were discussing, we might try to highlight some of the features that really worked well, and we saw a big success rate when the wallet implementation focused on such features, and some of the mistakes or some of the strategies that didn't work well in the adoption. So if we look at what really worked with consumers and the adoption was mainly how you can make it very easy for the consumer. What is really how it's easy for them to onboard, not only to pay, but how it's very easy to onboard and to get the card loaded or the credential stored, whatever the credential form factor is, how really it ended up verifying the user and getting this right to their wallet, and how also the incentives, and this is where we were talking about in the adoption and the incentive and loyalty, how this loyalty offer added into the payment to get user adoption, and how payment is really invisible. This is like the frictionless payment, and a good example of the consumer experience and the invisible payment is Amazon Go, where I'm sure that most of us heard of it, where you just go, you scan your app, and then you do the shopping and leave. So that's a use of a card on file payment use case, but it's totally invisible for the user. And of course, how security is enforced, because consumer will be very hesitant to use a new payment channel unless they feel secure. So security definitely is an important factor of what really worked and how people or how the technology behind the wallet show and make sure that the security is on the top of that, and that consumer is aware of security, how their credentials are handled and how their data is handled. And of course, how we change how they what really works is how different industry stakeholders cooperated together to provide such experience. When we talk about the card on file, how a payment network and a tokenization can help with storing this in a secure way while making it very easy for consumer to replace this token and update the token. So this includes payment network for token payment providers as a token service providers, and we have the merchants who are willing to provide the users with a card on file use case. So such collaboration will end up really with a better use case and better adoption of the technology. So this really worked well when implemented properly. And avoiding point of sale changes, that's very important. So if you are looking to change a big change in the checkout or the cashier side of the checkout, this might end up that you have to replace the usual point of sale with one with a camera, so it can scan QR code, for example. This might create lots of friction and will end up, maybe the sales associate will not be very well trained in some of the hiccups that might face the consumer and end up with lots of confusion. And this is something that we thought that must be avoided, or it should be avoided to ensure that a seamless implementation of such wallet. What didn't work on the other side, we can see that if the model is focused or mainly focused on driving the merchant cost down, so you want to omit certain industry contributor, or you want to have a very closed loop implementation of the payment, this might end up with less value add for the user, a very exclusive use case for such wallets, and this will really affect the adoption. So that's something that we identified as an important thing that will not work if really was the main focus. And definitely, as we discussed, requiring the merchant to change the point of sale hardware, lots of hiccups, training, sales associate, lots of problems with experience and the experience that users used to at certain merchants. And again, if you are not collaborating and all the ecosystem and the industry stakeholders are considered in such implementation, this will this will lead to very low adoption. And finally, there is also a fine line between how you are providing a personalized experience for the user and how you are getting this data to sell it or try to monetize off the data. So that's a very important factor and need to be considered, how you are getting the right content for the consumer without monetizing of this data and violating any of the privacy or the requirements that a consumer would expect for such an implementation, especially for a security transaction like their money or their cards. And on the left side, some of the examples, very successful implementation is the Starbucks, where we can see a 30% of their transaction as reported in one of their reports. 30% of the transaction in Starbucks location is using their wallet. Amazing adoption. And this is here we can see, if we want to slice and look into what really worked, to see that they are really focused on what we discussed here about the experience and how it's really easy, secure. We can see all of this implemented there. Same for Apple Pay. A very good portion of the contactless transaction in the US is driven by Apple Pay. And if we go on down in the list, we can see Softcard, a model where MNOs and different mobile carriers came together, lots of challenges, consortium model, that it was not very clear for consumer, the overall credentials and the flow of the credentials. So it ended up that it shut down after 2 years, and all the assets is acquired by Google, and it's part of Google. And next slide, please. And here we have a question about the
the ironic thing is that
security.
Randy mentioned in the beginning, when you poll people, why do they not use mobile wallets, they all say they don't think it's secure, and in reality, it's much more secure than most of our other payment methods. So.
Yeah, so now the question is really what you think makes the wallet to be secure. We all know the EMV chip security, so what do you think is what makes the wallet secure? Using the tokenization, the encryption, how biometric is incorporated, getting a device and mobile with all the sensor and the biometric feature, that's something that also adding to the security, and all of the above. Wow.
Right.
Which is true. And with this, yeah, I will hand over to Debbie for the rest of the presentation.
Okay. So these next few slides I will go through relatively quickly because the next webinar is on security, and you'll be going through these same flow slides again. But the point is, we just wanted to show how the transactions work, how the flow is. And I'd say the main takeaway from this first one, this is the device-centric, so Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, for contactless in-person payment transaction, is that it follows, uses EMV payment tokenization. It is equivalent to an EMV chip card transaction, except that it's contactless. So the way it works, is that you wave your device or your watch over the reader, and it passes a token and a cryptogram to the processor. It goes out to the payment network, and that recognizes it as a token and not the actual PAN. So it goes to the token service provider. We show there that the 4 token service providers are the payment networks, but more and more there will be other payment service providers in the market. And then it goes to the issuer, who passes back the response, and the token gets put back into token form and back to the POS with the response. On the next page, we look at the transactions for in-app, which is a little simpler. So in this case, the customer authorizes payment in the mobile app using biometric PIN or passcode. So you'd be looking at your phone or whatever, and it would do facial recognition or something like that. And it passes the payment token and the cryptogram, again, to the processor. The rest of the flow is the same as the earlier one, except what is passed back is not the token, but a confirmation message goes to your phone that the transaction went through. So it also mentions here that billing information may also be passed to the merchant in the merchant app. And the next one we are talking about, this is a real mouthful, Payment-network-centric cloud-based wallets. So these are the ones that I mentioned before, offered by Amex, Discover, and MasterCard. Visa has one too, but we didn't put it on this diagram because it's not technically, it's not a cloud-based wallet, but they do have something called Visa Checkout. So MasterCard and American Express work directly or with financial institutions to tokenize cards in the cloud wallet. And well, Discover just does its own cards in the cloud wallet. In some cases, cards from any brand could be added to the wallet, which makes, in that case, it could be a brand agnostic. And the way you enroll is either, if it's within the mobile app of the bank, the financial institution could have enrolled you automatically, or it could be offered as a standalone cloud wallet provider hosted site. So you could go to American Express and enroll, or as part of a first purchase. So if you go into a mobile app and it has one of these options and you push it, then it would do the enroll and then do the transaction. And it requires you to log into a checkout account or the mobile banking app. So it passes a token, the same pretty much as the other alternatives, and passes back a confirmation message. Then the last one is the merchant card on file. So this is different because it's the merchant doing the tokenization, really. So it's the merchant app, you click there to pay, and it has a token on file, not the actual PAN. It goes to the acquirer and then uses some token service provider. In this case, you see we don't have the logos in there. So it could be the acquirer offering the token service, or it could even be the merchant doing their own token service. And it goes, converts it to the PAN, which goes to the normal authorization process, and then back to the app. So this is optional using tokenization, but more and more because of data breaches, liability, and merchants are tokenizing and not storing clear credentials. Now, the last one we're going to go through on the next page is QR code wallets, and we don't have a flow diagram, but as you probably know, you've probably experienced both of these. There's 2 ways to do this. You can either have the QR code on your phone, or you can scan the merchant's QR code with your phone. And as we mentioned in the strategic considerations for merchants, a lot of merchants think that this is easier because you don't have to have an NFC. You can use standard scanners, and it works on any device and any payment type, so it's not tied to a specific device. So you can generate a QR code in the phone. Some of them do it dynamically for each transaction, or it can just be a static QR code that's stored in the wallet. And optionally, it could encrypt and tokenize. And optionally, it could be automatic enrollment by NFI. That's, I think, the case with Chase Pay, which also includes an option to pay with points, and you can use it in all these different places. The other one is where you have to have the merchant's app and you scan their QR code, which the mobile app then uses that information to do the payment in the cloud. So it's not actually transacting with the POS, and the payment credentials aren't stored in either the phone or the merchant terminal. So with that, I think that's it. We're going to Q&A, the next page.
Okay, thank you, Deb, and thank you, Mina. That was a great presentation, and we're going to move to Q&A here in just another minute or two. So if you do have any additional questions, please submit them now. Before we take your questions, I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about the online assessment and some additional resources that are available from the U.S. Payments Forum. So if you, as a reminder here that, and as I mentioned, we've prepared an online assessment quiz for each webinar in the series, and each quiz is multiple choice with less than 10 questions per quiz. So it's a pretty quick exercise here. If you participate in all 4 webinars and assessments, you'll receive a certificate and a registration discount to the 2019 Payment Summit. The link that you see on your screen is the link for the online assessment. If you want, you can take a minute and copy that down off your screen, but it will be sent to you as a follow-up to this webinar, along with the link for downloading the recorded presentation and slide deck, so you can wait until then. Also, we encourage you to share this this webinar and the playback with other colleagues in your organization, even if they didn't register for it, because we would like more people to be able to access it, even if they weren't able to participate in today's webinar. If we go to the next slide, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about 2 additional resources for you that to take advantage of for furthering your knowledge about mobile wallets and digital payments. The first is the conference that's coming up March 11th and 14th in Phoenix, Arizona. It's called the Payment Summit Conference, and it's a great opportunity to hear experts from across the payments ecosystem discussing the new trends and technologies and talking about the issues that are facing the payments market today and creative ways in which businesses are responding to those needs. If you are interested in U.S. Payments Forum, that Payments Forum meets 3 times a year, and they are holding their March meeting at the Payments Summit. So you can take the opportunity to join the U.S. Payments Forum now and be able to attend the Payment Summit and Forum meeting that's going to be held at the same location in Phoenix, Arizona over that 4-day stretch. And then from a resource standpoint, there's the Mobile and Digital Wallets U.S. Landscape and Strategic Considerations for Merchants and Financial Institutions white paper, which is the basis for what this webinar series was built on. If you want to read the research document that's supporting this paper for this webinar today, there's a link there that's available that you can click on from the USPaymentsForum.org website. And other resources are also available on the U.S. Payments Forum website. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll put up the speaker's contact information as we begin the Q&A session. The first question is for Deb. And what is the reason why Walmart Pay uses a QR code instead of NFC at checkout?
Oh, great question. Well, they have 2 reasons for that. One is, as you might know, Apple, to this point, and this could change, but they don't allow anyone to access their secure element except themselves. So Apple Pay is the only payment method that uses the Apple Pay secure element enabling NFC. And there's no way around that, like there is with Android, where they came up with host card emulation. The whole reason, it's kind of a long, involved thing, but they developed that so that they didn't have to access the secure element of the phone and cooperate with the mobile operators. But anyway, so the only way to have an app that works on all the devices is to use QR code and not NFC. But Walmart has another reason for not wanting to accept NFC, and it has to do with honor all wallets. So they haven't turned on contactless anywhere at Walmart.
Thanks, Deb.
Sure.
And this next question is for Mina. One of your slides, you talked about what worked and what did not work. And since overall usage is low, is there really any data to support the things that are mentioned that have worked? And could you maybe elaborate on what you meant by those items?
Yeah, sure. So when we were developing the white paper, we were trying to put together different KPIs that will govern or define the success of such wallet. Overall, yeah, there is low adoption of the contactless technology in general, but when you look at the certain wallet and their lifetime in the market versus others that disappeared in a year or two, we can put this as a success factor, regardless of the number or the population, but we still get some industry reports and insights that we can map into the KPIs and do our assessment that we were doing during the white paper to put such KPIs and define that this is really a common feature of all the wallets that stayed in the market and is still having an up curve in adoption. Even it's slow, but still it is going and growing.
Okay, thank you, Mina. This question, I think, I can open up to either of you or both of you. Why are retailers slow to enable checkout for mobile wallets, and what's being done for issuers to get consumers to use their wallets more frequently?
So the question is, why haven't more retailers started to accept contactless? Is that
that's the question for the retailer side, and the question on the issue is, what are issuers doing to get users to use their wallets more frequently?
Well, one thing that Samsung, I know it's not an issuer, but they did something that was pretty compelling when they first launched Samsung Pay, is they had a reward program and they had different tiers. So the more you used it, that kind of accelerated your accumulation of their points and I think it translated into money. You could use to buy things with the points in the Samsung Pay program. So that was one example. I think it's a complex tie-in between like enabling contactless and issuing contactless cards that people can use at transit. And the thought is that if you use a card or your mobile wallet at transit, that would kind of develop a habit and you would use it more often at other retailers. And as far as why other merchants are slow to implement contactless, I guess it's the chicken and egg thing again. Those of us who are enthusiastic about it use it everywhere we can, but the rest of the people, the average Joe, is not clamoring to use a mobile wallet because we still haven't really hit the silver bullet. It would make people really, really want to use it. So some retailers do it because they, in their strategy, they want to accept everything, and others are taking more of a wait and see attitude. I don't know, Mina, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would also add about in general, the NFC technology enablement at the merchants, and the whole wave of EMV migration that took place in the US in 2015, and following this certification process for NFC. So this also created kind of a slow adoption. And from the issuer side, I would stress on the fact that look at the consumer experience. If I pick the card once and the card didn't work for different reason, the merchant did not enable the contactless, or the card support like an MSD versus EMV mode of contactless, lots of different variants of the contactless. Once I try the card and it's not working, maybe I will not try it again. As a normal consumer, I feel like something is wrong. So this is, again, back to Debbie's point that it's a chicken and egg. Once we have more adoption, the users will get more use to use their contactless card, and the tap will be their usual act of transacting. So again, once we have the adoption, you will get this used more by consumers, and issuer will have such better adoption.
And as far as the silver bullet, I mean, people always bring up the example of Uber. So everyone uses Uber, and it's that's another model, but it makes things so much easier. And then retailers are trying things like Walmart with a scan and go, or where you don't have to stand in line. They're doing that at Sam's Club. That could be something that really catches on. So there's continual experimentation.
Okay, this is a question, I guess, for both of you as well. It's a transit-related question about, can transit agencies that currently use cards be able to start using contactless cards and mobile when they become more available?
They can, but they have to replace all of their equipment.
Yeah, maybe you can just go a little bit detail about what's the difference between the cards that are in use today in transit versus the open wallets and contactless payment cards.
Yeah, well, I can relate to an experience I had in Chicago a couple months ago. I went into the airport, I went to the train, and then, whenever you're in a new city and you're going to get on a bus or a train, it's like this moment of dread. You don't know whether your cards or how to buy the ticket. And I walked to the turnstile in Chicago, and I tapped my phone, and the thing opened, and I took the train, and it was unbelievable. So that's the way it's going to work in the future for those who implement the open, what do they call it, open fare, that any contactless card or mobile wallet will work, and it accepts a credit or debit card payment in the back end.
Yeah, so if I would add, this is mainly how if they are using a closed loop system versus an open loop system, this is where we can see the ease of plugging in the acceptance of mobile wallets. And good part of the technology and the technology in the wallets and the EMV is you can also have some of the features that can authenticate the card faster offline without going back to the host, and will make it very easy, which is an important factor for transit agency, which is the speed of check-in and how the gates are kept open for queues to get in. So there is definitely, depending on the infrastructure that is currently in use, and also the acceptance of open loop, including the feature of offline authentication to offline the ODA, offline data authentication, to get the user in very fast.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated, but it's pretty slick when it's finally set up.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Got a lot of questions here, and I don't know who mentioned this in their presentation about there being a silver bullet for driving usage, but someone wants to know, what do you believe the silver bullet could be to help drive more mobile wallet usage?
Well, that's the $60,000 question, isn't it? If we knew that, we'd be sunning on the beach.
Have to pay you for that information. Is that it?
Well, it's the things that were hypothesized, like the Uber thing and like the Starbucks thing, which is loyalty, making the shopping experience easier, making payments invisible, but in transit. But I don't know. It kind of remains to be seen. I don't know. What do you think, Mina?
Yeah, I always give a nice example when I talk to any of my family member about this wallet or this or that one. Is it tokenized, secure elements? They don't care. They want to see, okay, how it's convenient. So it's how we really focus around the user, how we turn such payment into a habit for the user. So you can see in different markets, you can see how a market which is now adopted or using contactless in general, how they are very used to tap. Very used to tap. You can see in Europe, in Canada, and other markets where contactless adoption is larger than here in the US. You can see how this is becoming a habit. This is the checkout habit, and how also we put this as an ease of use for consumer who will not care about different aspects and will only care about their experience while checking out. So I would say it's always focused on the consumer.
Okay, this next question is, I think, somewhat related to the last one, but it deals with dual interface EMV plastic cards, and how do you see the impact of contactless EMV plastic cards being introduced to the market affecting the use of mobile? Will plastic cards replace mobile, or will plastic cards not be used because people will prefer to use their mobile? I guess that's an open question.
There's a big push in, especially in metropolitan areas with transit, to do dual interface to convince this is some of the topics that we discuss in the U.S. Payments Forum, which is why it's so cool that everybody's at the table. But the transit agencies would like all the issuers to kind of issue the dual interface as a default, like they do in Canada. And it would just be a virtuous circle if that happened and more people started using contactless cards. I think it would help drive up mobile and vice versa. What do you think, Mina?
Yeah, I agree. They will definitely help. This will increase the habits of tapping to pay. So this will definitely help mobile wallets. Once, you know, when you look at the consumer now, some of them, they think that Apple Pay is only accepted here, or only Google Pay accepted here. They don't know that contactless is accepted at that location. So once we create this habit that whenever you see the contactless symbol, or you know that this card and mobile and all of this different technology is accepted, this will create the habit that I am tapping to pay. Whether this tap is mobile or a card, it will end up of a big lift of the usage and adoption of the contactless technology in general. So they definitely help each other.
I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let you guys answer it anyway. Why?
You know the answer to all the questions.
Why is digital wallet adoption in China, which is about 70%, so common compared to usage in the U.S., which is less than 15%?
Well, it's a great leapfrog forward. They have tons of debit cards, but mostly people were just using cash until very, very recently. And they never developed much in the area of credit cards. And then they got these two gargantuan, wildly popular services that aren't just payment, they do everything. Alipay and WeChat, Alibaba, and they do everything. They social, you see pictures, your ride share. It's absolutely amazing. So they never got into the habit of what we do, and they leapfrogged forward.
So existing infrastructure to support QR codes, it's easier and faster to implement QR than it is to implement NFC at the point of sale is also a major factor here. And the fact that the U.S. consumer has been trained on use of cards and swiping for so many years, making them change their behavior, I think, is
right.
A challenge. Right?
All the merchants need is a phone, and really they don't need a POS.
Great. Well, I see we're at the top of the hour. That hour went really quick. I hope all of you enjoyed this webinar and got a taste for what is coming. And please make a note on your calendars to participate in our future webinars. Your registration to this one automatically has you registered for the remaining series, but please share this information with your colleagues and friends and get more people to sign up, and then you can go back. They can go back in and listen to the playback of the ones that they missed. I want to thank you all for participating in today's webinar, and special thanks go out to our presenters, Deborah Baxley and Mina Malak, for today's webinar. Here's our contact information. Feel free to contact us afterwards for any follow-up or feedback to the webinar. And a reminder that the webinar has been recorded and will be available for playback along with the presentation deck after the webinar has been concluded. So look for that email message from us in the next few days. Please feel free to share this information with others. And we, again, thank you for your participation today. And this concludes today's webinar. Thank you and have a great day.